Let us pray. Almighty God, we who have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele lezu letu na bantu balo, umusili ukulungu bipondo letu. Kosi sikalela i Afrika, Tina Bantwana Bayo. Kokelo in Kokeli Zayo, in Niki Ukolo i Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Good morning, honourable members. Good morning to our guest in the gallery. It is indeed a privilege to have you with us today. I do just wish to draw your attention to the rules of the gallery. You are not allowed to participate in the proceedings of the House, and that includes no clapping or interjecting. You also have to ensure that your cell phones are on silent, please. Thank you. I now recognise the Chief Whip.
Morning, Speaker. I table the two motions in my name, motions 1 and 2, relating to Rule 161, concerning the principle and finalisation of the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill, and then notwithstanding the provision of Rule 18, that the hours of the sitting on Tuesday the 26th and Wednesday the 27th and Thursday the 28th shall be 10 o'clock to adjournment.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Are there any objections? The Chief Whip has raised both motions in one go. No objections. Agreed to. We now get to the order of the day. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of principle of the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2019.
Thank you, Secretary. I also wish to welcome the administration. Thank you. I now see the Honourable, the Minister of Finance, Minister Mayor.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. When I tabled the adjustment estimates of provincial expenditure on the 5th of March 2019, I highlighted the fact that this government has implemented a financial good governance model aimed at ensuring accountability for programs, budgets, delivery and against targets. Honourable Speaker, the province received an additional 83.773 million rand from the National Treasury through the Provincial Emergency Housing Grant. National Treasury's allocation of additional funds to the Western Cape is indeed an expression of confidence in the ability of this government not only to spend but to do so efficiently, economically and effectively. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Mayor. I now see the Honourable Member, Member Davids. Members, can we settle down, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Since 1994, over 3.2 million free houses have been built, benefiting over 14 million people. This has meant a massive extension of home ownership, growing the productive assets of our people. In the recent period, we have been hard at work to ensure that more and more South Africans live closer to economic opportunities and that we eventually overcome the race-based spatial separation of our people inherited from apartheid. Vacant land near the centers of cities and towns must be turned into affordable housing for the poor and working class, close to the shops and parks, schools and clinics, public transport and places of work. We must do more to address the role of the financial sector in national development, including problems of access to funding and capital for small enterprises, housing townships and villages, enterprises and infrastructure. In this regard, the national government has responded to the devastating fires which occurred in Khayelitsha and surrounding areas by providing additional funding for the alternative accommodation, what we call TRAs. Kailicha fire destroys 342 structures. The Democratic Alliance in Cape Town delivers sack kits to those people. Local government in the form of the Democratic Alliance has provided assistance to embattled residents of the town too, mainly in the form of sack kits and meals. This is an insult to our poor people who demand adequate housing. Another blaze ripped through E52 Kosovo informal settlement in Philippi, destroying over 100 sacks and displacing more than 1,000 people. Until the city of Cape Town actively address issues of land, housing and spatial planning, sex fires will continue to displace and kill the city's poor. We want to thank the Human Settlement Department for applying to the National Department for this fund, but we hope that they will apply for all the other areas where the fires occurred. I thank you.
Thank you, Member Davids. Order, please. Order. Member Davids, Minister Windy, let's control our fingers and our emotions. In the absence of the Honourable Member Christians and the absence of the Honourable Member Bernard Joseph of the EFF, I now call on the Minister of Human Settlements, Minister Madikizela.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I do want to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Member Davids, on the work that has been done nationally, but just a slight correction, because I think it's important that we must not underestimate the work that this government has done. When I'm talking about government, I'm talking about national government in general. We have actually provided over 4.7 million houses. So I think it must not be understated. Madam Speaker, thank you very much once again for the opportunity to be presenting the additional budget to assist the communities who are affected by fire. My department received an additional adjustment budget of 83 million from the National Department of Human Settlements to assist us with 2 fire disasters that left the communities of Kosovo and Philippi in Silvertown in Kailicha homeless. Now, 462 informal structures were destroyed, displacing approximately 1,900 people from these two communities. Applications were submitted to the National Department of Human Settlements for the emergency grants in December last year, and approval was granted this year in February 2019. As I'm talking to you now, Madam Speaker, full professional teams have already been appointed for both these communities, Kosovo and Silvertown. Tenders have already been advertised and compulsory briefing session held for the construction of 1,300 units for both areas. The reason why we opted to build more units than the structures that burned down is so that we can commence with the upgrading of Silvertown and Kosovo informal settlements by decanting more people into the temporary relocation areas to allow for the construction of roads and installation of services at these settlements to avert future crises. We are working together with the City of Cape Town to reblock Silvertown settlements, and the Kosovo project forms part of the department's catalytic project. The relocation of a substantial number of people will enable us to commence with the project on the Kosovo main side, because Kosovo is part of our catalytic project, as I've said. And again, I must say that, as Member Davis said, we've also made application for other fires that we experienced. As you are aware that, for example, in Wuppertal, we have 53 formal structures that were destroyed in the area in December. So the application was already submitted to the Department of Human Settlements nationally, and we are waiting for approval. And lastly, Madam Speaker, just to say that in other 2 areas that were devastated by fires, this is your vet locacy in Nice. Now work is being done, and also in Imizamo Yetu, and I'm sure Member Makeleni will be very happy to know that the sites were identified, designs are completed, and we are looking at building more than 1,400 structures, so if we densify. So this is all the work that we are doing, working together with the National Department to improve the lives of our people in the Western Cape, and we will continue to make sure that those informal settlements, working with NGOs who are who are dense in population, we are going to upgrade them and make sure that people have access to roads, water, sanitation, and electricity. I thank you.
Thank you. I now see the Honourable Minister, Minister Mayor.
Honourable Speaker, thank you for the respective contributions in this debate. I have attended the meeting with Minister Madikizela on the 3rd of January this year, together with Minister Bradell, about some of these many other fires, and I'm satisfied with the progress made by our Department of Human Settlements to respond to the fires in Khayelitsha and in Philippi. Much needed shelter was provided to the displaced families, and I'm confident that the department will spend these additional funds in a responsible and accountable manner. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any objections to the approval of the principle of the bill? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill.
Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2018-2019 financial year.
The Secretary will read the second order of the day.
Consideration of vote and schedule Western Cape Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2018-2019 financial year.
I'm not sure if parties do want to make declarations of vote. If not, then I put the vote. No objections to the vote being agreed to? Agreed to. That concludes the decision on the vote. I'll now put the schedule to the bill. Any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I'll now put clauses 1 to 4 of the bill. No objections. Agreed to. I'll put the short title. No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the third order.
Finalization of the Western Cape Adjustment Appropriation Bill B18 financial year.
I see the Minister, Minister Mayor.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the 5th of March, I tabled in this House the 2019 overview of the provincial revenue and expenditure, the overview of the provincial and municipal infrastructure investment, the estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, the Western Cape 2019 Appropriation Bill and Associate Provincial Gazette of allocations to municipalities, and the main Western Cape main budget for discussions and consideration in this House. I highlighted in this budget that we're tabling a budget under the theme Maximum Citizen Impact, which is a budget for jobs, a budget for service delivery, a budget for safety, a budget for the youth, a budget for infrastructure, and a budget for climate change, and a budget for good governance. I concluded, Honourable Deputy Speaker, by saying that this budget builds on the legacy of Premier Alan Zille and hands over to the next Premier a financially sound business. I was able to do so, Honourable Speaker, because over the last 10 years, this government implemented a sound fiscal strategy.
Just 1 second.
Is there a problem, Honourable Deputy Speaker?
We might have skipped one stage. Can we just get clarity from the table? Are we there now? Yes, Minister, my apology. We are actually at order of the day number 3, which is the finalisation of the third of the Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation Bill.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move that the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2018-19 be finalised and submitted to the Premier to be assented to. I thank you.
Thank you. We will then read the next order, which is the fourth order. Secretary will read the fourth order, yes.
Western Cape Additional Adjustments Appropriation Bill 2018-2019 financial year.
Thank you. I see the Minister now. The fourth order.
Okay. Thank you, Chief Whip of the Opposition. I take your advice. I save time. Honourable Speaker, this government was able to achieve these successes because there was also underpinned a good financial fiscal strategy. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the fiscal strategy, and since we are dealing now with the principles, the second reading debate in terms of the principles of this budget, I would very much like to move to the principles underpinning this particular policy framework of this government. The government guiding policy principles, Honourable Deputy Speaker, for the fiscal and budget principles and the core budget elements are utilised in conjunction with the following guiding principles. The guiding principles that underpins the Western Cape government's integrated planning and budgeting processes are constitutionalism, and we know how important this is given what is currently happening at the national landscape. A former minister testifying right now, while we're sitting here, how the Guptas allocated ministerial positions. So constitutionalism, fundamentally important. The second principle, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is citizen-centric, respecting the rule of law, the whole of society approach, evidence-based practice, partnerships, the creation of public value, and also the theory of change. Honourable Deputy Speaker, let me highlight a few of the fiscal and budget policy principles. One is allocative efficiency, which aims to balance allocations of resources that reflects the priorities of this government and program effectiveness based on evidence with a greater focus on reprioritization and trade-offs. A second principle, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is fiscal sustainability, which refers to continuous and stable delivery of services without a major or sudden disruptions in budget allocations which could potentially be caused by a constrained economic and fiscal environment. A third principle of this budget is fiscal consolidation, which focuses on the reduction of government expenditure or the rate by which government expenditure increases in a responsible manner while simultaneously increasing government revenue. Honourable Deputy Speaker, we made it our business during this term of office to increase our domestic resource mobilization, and this principle was necessitated due to the adverse economic and fiscal environment over the recent years. And we have made some adjustments in our gambling and tax regime, as well as in the liquor licensing regime. Lastly, Honourable Deputy Speaker, fiscal discipline is narrowly intertwined with fiscal governance, where departments and entities are encouraged to remain within aggregate budget limits and avoid unauthorised, irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Honourable Deputy Speaker, for the last 10 years, this is the only government that had zero unauthorised expenditure in the whole of South Africa. That speaks to the fiscal strategy of this government. Honourable Deputy Speaker, this whilst the Northern Cape, for the last 5 years, had 7.2 billion rand irregular expenditure and unauthorised expenditure. Now, Honourable Deputy Speaker, if you have 7.2 billion rand irregular and unauthorised expenditure, you could have built, Minister Madikizela, 45,000 houses in just one province. And so this demonstrates the importance of having fiscal discipline in your architecture. Part one is in a prison in Uppington, and I was there the last 3 days, John Block. The balanced budget. There is a balanced budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker. In a weak economic and fiscal environment, the Western Cape government needs to ensure that sufficient room exists to respond to its mandate and to deal with adverse shocks while giving effect to its budget policy priorities. So we have tabled a balanced budget. But also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we're living in the so-called VUCA world, where there's lots of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And therefore, we also, in this budget that we have tabled on the 5th of March, made provision for servant load pressures, which enables the Western Cape government to deliver on its frontline service delivery mandates, particularly and very stressfully for those particular MECs in health, education, and social development in other service delivery departments. But, Honourable Deputy Speaker, over the last 5 years, we have also managed the Fiscal Stabilisation Reserve, which is provided as a response to deal with the volatility in the fiscal framework, particularly to offset the negative impacts of changes in the fiscal framework, mainly to the provincial equitable share. Honourable Deputy Speaker, we have seen in the last 3 years less tax collected, 50 billion rand, then 30 billion, than 27 billion nationally as a result of the ANC's mismanagement of the South African revenue services. And therefore, we in this government had to build in a fiscal stabilization reserve to deal with some of these shocks. So it comes at a price to this government. But also, Honourable Deputy Speaker, another principle of our fiscal framework is expenditure management. Expenditure management largely involves managing the compensation of employees, transfer of goods and services and infrastructure budget within affordable levels, and finding the appropriate mix of expenditure items to achieve this sustainability and efficiency to spend. Honourable Deputy Speaker, again, Limpopo has 78% of their COE budget, is the 78% of the total budget goes to COE. That demonstrates why that province is described as the corruption capital of South Africa. We have been able, through proper expenditure management, to manage effectively the wage bill. And lastly, Honourable Deputy Speaker, domestic resource mobilization, specifically in terms of increases in terms of the gambling tax, additional resources of donor funding, motor vehicle licenses, hospital fees, and actively reducing the debt owed to provincial government. The Western Cape, Honourable Deputy Speaker, has a stable fiscal framework. The national fiscal framework under the ANC government has already collapsed. ESCOM has collapsed because of state capture and the National Democratic Revolution. The ANC has a license to loot. The ANC has a license to loot, and the looting has destroyed South Africa's fiscal framework. I thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Honourable Magaga.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Safety is by far the province's Achilles heel. The Zille Commission noted that the lack of street lights and CCTV cameras
Order, member.
contributed to the
Order.
crime.
Order, just 1 second. Honourable
We've had a ruling in this House previously, Deputy Speaker. There is no such thing as a Zille Commission. It's a Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry.
Order, Honourable Ace.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I know you also made the ruling on that, and you said the member can call it whatever he would like to call it.
I said at the time it's politics, and I'm not going to say what you must call it. We know what the real name is, but the member may continue.
The Zille Commission noted the lack of street lights and CCTV cameras contributed to the crime in Khayelitsha.
Order.
It also instructed the provincial government to address the issue of youth gangs. DA failed to deliver on this. Through this budget, the DA had an opportunity to take the people into confidence that the party was serious about fighting gangs and ensure safety in communities. Again, the party failed to deliver that. Instead, it became part of the crime. It contributed immensely. In fact, I will prove that. The 1.1 billion allocation for community safety over the MTEF may sound like a lot of money when in fact it translates to a meager 359.3 million for the 2019-2020 financial year. We all know now none of this money will be used to prevent crime and ensure safety in the gang-infested areas, as the role of this department has been reduced to mere part-time oversight. All community crime fighting structures established by the ANC were dismantled, and now CPF are being purged using the EPP. MEC Windy must tell us why Khayelitsha is not going to benefit from the city's 62.5 million budget for public lighting. This proves safety crisis in the Western Cape is not by accident, but by design. The 43 million housing tender awarded to Glomix House brokers is case in point. The company is owned by the wife of a well-known gang boss in the province. Congratulations. This tender has far more repercussion than we think. It gives a platform to the gang to buy more guns and ammunition. It is an opportunity to hire more hitmen who will be in the company's payroll. It also empowers the company to circulate and distribute more drugs. Dirty money received through haste and money laundering and other mechanisms will now be cleansed via this company of the DA. This boils down to one issue. The DA is aiding gangs and fueling gang murders in the province. That's why they were against the gang unit. The silence of MEC Windy on this matter is concerning. It gives an indication of a weak and ineffective leader who hides his head in the sand when action is needed. This is not surprising. His previous departments have been complete failure, including agriculture with its audit records and non-tabling of the annual reports, of which our MEC decided to ignore that reality. MEC Windy must take his views known on the matter, or he must tell us if, like the predecessor, he is in the pockets of gang leaders. The awarding of this tender is very wrong and must be condemned. The national government needs to intervene. This tender must be investigated. The flimsy explanation by MEC Madigizela in defense of awarding the tender to known gang vindicates me when I call her intellectually challenged. He is. MEC Mayor talks of a budget for jobs when he knows the province specializes in creating seasonal jobs. I want to commend Gauteng,
Order.
KZN, and Limpopo, the three provinces that State South Africa acknowledge as major contributors to job creation. The state of our health services will further tumble into crisis with this budget. The health budget increased by over 7%, thanks to the national government. In turn, this provincial government decided to decrease the budget for planned patients. This is a recipe for a disaster and will affect mainly poor people in the farming communities. MEC Mayor has committed to spend 1 billion over the 2019 MTF towards land reform. This is too little, and it must start being channeled towards farming communities where black emerging farmers own only 1% of agricultural economy. This could also help to address the daily eviction of farm workers. Yesterday, we commemorated the Sharpeville massacre. Our people died fighting for this united, non-racial, non-sexist, prosperous, and free South Africa. Their sacrifices were not in vain. As a leader of the opposition, I will not be doing justice to my party and our people if I don't reprimand and condemn this racist government of the DA. In fact, I was to also refer to the Premier if that was not, I want to say that actually. If it was not unparliamentary to call a member a racist, I would say Premier Nzil is a racist.
Order. You're trying your luck here, Honourable Member. Order. Order. Member, that is still unparliamentary. You must withdraw that.
I'm saying outside this building, not here. I won't care.
If you say it outside, it's something different, but you said it in the House. So, order, order. Please withdraw that, and you can continue.
I'll draw that one.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. As a leader of the Premier, for her reckless utterances that seek to divide society and bring this House into disrepute. On the 11th March 2018, one Jarvis DuPont wrote on Twitter, I quote, "I have a dream that one day every child on this planet will one day live in a world where they can be judged, not on the content of their character, but on the color of their skin, by their gender and their sexuality. This was retweeted by our beloved Premier with the following caption.
Order.
I quote, "Your dream is closer being realized than you think." In fact, she was short of saying that dream is closer to her heart. This dream is what the DA calls an open society approach, which MEC Mayor spoke about when he tabled his budget. One example of this dream is that the DA in the city collects billions in profit from water and sanitation tariff from the poor, while the Rondebosch golf course pays the city only 1,000 per year to access and control public land. Rondebosch golf course as a public land cannot continue to enrich white people while the poor landless people live in Squela, in Cape Flat and the Black Township. This land must be expropriated and used for housing for the poor people. This dream resulted in a 10-year period of non-delivery of services. Today, the DA is selling people lies about how it spent the years fighting corruption, laying a foundation for solid government, my foot. During the same year, Rod Lenton tells us that Musi Maimane and Madam were negotiating, Madam Zil, were negotiating a deal with Israeli government company for aid.
Order. The point of order is taken, Honourable Wali, that he refers to the member as an honourable member.
Derogatory remark.
Yes, thank you. Please refer to the member of the House as an honourable member.
Yes, honourable member. During the same period, Rodney Lenton tells us that Musi Maimane and the Madam Zille were Honourable Helen Zille.
That was the very point of order.
Negotiating a deal with Israel company for a 6 billion project for desalination plant in which the corruption-fighting DA will receive 600 million in kickbacks. This exposed that the DA is inherently corrupt party and a party of lies. The lies include calling this nonsense of a budget youth service delivery and safety. It is pure lies. The first action of the 6th administration should be to change this budget. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever to rush this process. There will be ample time after May the 8th to work on the budget. The DA rushed through this process because the writing is on the wall with the latest Ipsos poll, making it clear that the DA will not get a clear majority in the province, and nationally it will drop from 22% to 18%. But my own is 2%. You deserve 2% if there's justice in this world. The people can see through DA lies. The people are tired of DA racism, camouflage in fancy slogan like open society. Yesterday also marked the closing of the anti-racist week, which started on the 14th to 21st of March. At this point, allow me to convey a message of appreciation and gratitude to Anti-Racist Network South Africa, as well as South African musician 10K for their program during the week and their contribution in the fight against corruption.
Order.
I fully agree with 10K's sentiment that, I quote...
Order, member. Your time has almost expired. Just finish off your last sentence, please.
Can I just finish this? Not enough white people call out racism when it rears its ugly head. Yes, it may be uncomfortable, and yes, you may be the singular and popular opinion, but stand firm and have courage. We can no longer be silent. I am disappointed that Premier Zille publicly objected this call. She ridiculed Tenike for his call and mocked his spelling errors. What a flop.
I see the Honourable Dennis Joseph. Order. Before you speak, order. Please come to order. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Die begroting wat ons vanoggend bespreek en debatteer oor, begin by verskillende rolspelers. Die komitee wil op hierdie stadium almal bedank saam met die minister wat die rol gespeel het. Ons oorsigrol in die komitee oor die kabinet en die administrasie is baie belangrik. Daar's ook 'n oorsigrol wat deur politieke partye en lede van die verskillende politieke partye gespeel word. En dan moet ek net noem dat vanoggend se begrotingskomitee was net ons agbare lid eis teenwoordig en by die vorige komitee was daar nie een van die ANC en die oppositiepartye se lede teenwoordig by die begrotingskomitee nie, wat beteken hulle het klaar die stryd opgegee. Hulle het die stryd opgegee in soverre dat hulle nie eens die ANC nie eens 'n premierskandidaat kan aanwys nie. So ons verstaan hoekom dit so sleg gaan binne die ANC. Daar is ook die oorsig wat gedoen word deur die kiesers op verskeie vlakke in die publieke verhore met geskrewe insette en deur middel van die media. What is the challenge? What is the challenge that we as a DA government must deal with? What is the priorities that we identify and how do we fix that? What is the policies that we put in place or policies that we must change? What are the control and monitoring systems that are in place? How transparent is the government? And how well do we communicate our message to the public? Speaker, this Parliament has improved on all records in terms of public participation and being transparent. The strategic goals of the Cabinet and the DA government in the Western Cape, the projects identified and implemented, the project plan presented by the HODs of various departments in line with the Constitution and policies is of paramount importance. When the Division of Revenue Bill was presented in this House, it was revealed that though the province is showing above average growth, as seen, we've seen a slight increase in our provincial equitable share, but unfortunately this increase does not match the challenges that I referred to earlier and the population growth that we experience in the Western Cape. Thus, Provincial Treasury encountered challenges in allocating adequate amounts to each department and the programs in this province in order to make sure that our service is above standard, remains above standard, which the Western Cape is known for. The Division of Revenue Bill will further reveal that a lot goes to servicing debt due to the mismanagement by national government and the attempts to maintain stability in this country. Unfortunately, we have experiences this and the chaos every day, daily, that we see the bailouts of Eskom, how it plays out, and the fact that it becomes the dysfunctional state-owned entity. The 2019 budget for the people amounts to 68 billion, and the transfer from national government, it's 93.8%. This figure could have been much higher if the ANC-led government acted decisively against corruption and mismanagement. Speaker, it is against the backdrop that I would like to commend our Minister and the Department and the Budget Council for the extraordinary work that they have done to table this 2019 budget. This budget ensures that each department in this province will be capacitated to perform functions of public value despite the challenges that we face. The Minister has shown that a little can go a long way, and I'm confident that the implementation stage of this budget will indeed reach maximum citizen impact. It displays avenues of good financial governance. It is socially responsible and offers avenues needed for sustainability. It will go a long way in re-establishing much needed confidence in public institutions in a way that only the DA government can do. With regards to the enhancing government, Provincial Treasury will allocate 1.1 billion to drive good governance under corporate governance frameworks and fiscal and financial governance maturity model for effective service delivery. A long-term financial planning will allow for infrastructure-led growth with the allocation of 6.8 billion over the next 10 years. Investing in infrastructure is a continuous manner, and it removes the obstacle that hindering growth, incentives, investment, and allows for participation in the economy. It is important that we learn that preserving our environment undeniably essential for human well-being. The 2019 budget responds to climate change with a staggering amount of 83.987 million allocated towards enabling the promotion and the stimulation of a green economy and water resource province. The budget supports innovation by driving e-governance agenda with the allocation of 3.2 billion over the 2019 MTF framework. Also keeping up with the modern day trends. The 7.8 billion for the Department of Social Development over the medium term goes a long way for bulk allocations towards the department and also the Department of Health and Education that will address the most pressing needs in society, in the long run address social challenges in the promotion of social security. Die begrotingsrede van die nasionale minister Tito Mboweni het ook nie die nodige hupstoot in die ekonomie gebring nie. Die sakeondernemers en verbruikers in die Weskaap moet die las dra van swak leierskap van 'n ANC-regering en die party wat nie die politieke wil het om 'n goeie regeringsbeleid in te stel nie. Na die afgradering van die SA kredietbeheer sal beteken dat meer beleggers die land sal verlaat en ons rand se waarde sal verswak. Corruption and state capture needs to be viewed in a broader governance framework. Corruption thrives where the rule of law is disregarded, good policies are ignored, and the Public Financial Management Act and the Municipal Financial Management Act is ignored. A productive and responsive public service and administration with norms and standards will bring service delivery outcomes that benefits the people of the
Just
Western
finish off,
Cape.
your time has expired.
Ek wil graag 'n woord van dank en waardering aan die personeel uitspreek van die Weskaap, alle private instansies, die publiek, alle nie-regeringsorganisasies en ook ons personeel van die parlement wat die termyn van die 5de parlement beëindig. Ek wil sê op hierdie noot, well done en baie dankie.
Baie dankie.
Dankie.
In the absence of the ACDP, I see Minister Debbie Schäfer, Minister of Education.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Minister Mayor's recent budget speech focused on the Western Cape Government's theme of consolidation for maximum citizen impact. And we don't mean the kind of impact that the national government does, one that fails to provide for maintenance of essential infrastructure, but rather for maximum ANC impact and the enrichment of loyal cadres, whether they have the right skills or not, and which is leading to more job losses in addition to the 10 million that have already been lost under the ANC. We mean a budget that focuses on providing opportunities for our people, especially our youth and the disadvantaged. One that supports the creation of a safe and secure province, that provides an enabling environment for job creation and skills development, builds and maintains economic and social infrastructure, and applies good governance standards. The lack of fiscal discipline at a national level, as well as in other provincial governments, is having a catastrophic effect on our economy. The stage 4 blackouts we have endured this week mean that for 7.5 hours a day, businesses cannot make money. The effects of this are that employers have to let go of non-essential staff, thus adding to the 10 million people who are unemployed under the ANC government. The growth and development of every economy hinges on how resources are managed, and under the ANC, I am afraid we cannot say they are being managed, they are being mismanaged. Our country is suffering and the ANC has no answers. It is against this backdrop that we are here today, trying to do everything we can to provide the best opportunities for the people of the Western Cape, whilst working under severe constraints. Because of our good governance and the fact that our unemployment rate is lower than the national unemployment rate, families continue to move to the Western Cape by the thousands in the hope of finding a job and in the hope of accessing better, or in some cases, just any form of healthcare and education for their families. Meeting our service delivery goals has become increasingly difficult as we face inadequate budgets that do not keep pace with the increasing numbers. The additional numbers are placing huge demands on all our resources, including schools, housing, and medical facilities. In the education environment, the large in-migration has massive financial and planning consequences, impacting on the provisioning of education resources and the overall management of the system. We are, in effect, victims of our own success. But that's okay, because we, unlike the ANC, care about the citizens in our country and our province. And as a responsible, caring government, people are dying at schools in Gauteng, yes. And as a responsible, caring government, we are using every cent that we receive maximally, increasing access to services and opportunities for all, but especially the disadvantaged people of our province. One of our primary focus areas is to improve opportunities for our youth, to provide an enabling environment, job creation and skills development, and to build and maintain economic and social infrastructure. We invested a large allocation of our budget in school infrastructure to meet the growing demand for schooling in the province, as well as to replace schools built with inappropriate materials and to maintain existing infrastructure. It is an unfortunate fact of our history that many schools were built with inappropriate materials and without all the necessities of a good public school. In 2009, when our administration took over the Western Cape government, we inherited a backlog of hundreds of schools that were built with inappropriate materials, dating back to the apartheid era, that evidently needed a maintenance upgrade or to be replaced entirely with a new structure.
Order.
At the same time, we are faced with keeping up with the population growth by building new schools and classrooms to cater for the additional 18 to 25,000 learners who enter our school system each year. The track record of the previous ANC administration in tackling these two issues of maintaining and building schools was abysmal. The current DA-led administration has made a significant shift in its infrastructure delivery by focusing on the replacement of these schools into new brick and mortar structures.
Order.
Since 2009,
Minister, order, just 1 second. Honourable Nkondlu, you are busy with multitasking, working on your computer and giving running commentary all the time. I would suggest that you do the one only, and that is work on your computer. Please continue, Minister.
Thank you. Since 2009, we have completed 76 replacement schools and plan to replace 20 more in the next MTIF. During the ANC's tenure between 2004 and 2009, they only replaced 3 schools. Besides replacement schools, the WCED has built an additional 351 classrooms and constructed 1,032 mobile classrooms to accommodate growth in mainly our poorer areas. The delivery of new schools is also significantly higher in the poorer communities, where there has been a very high growth over the last 9 years. We have built on average 14 schools and 265, many of them. We have built on average 14 schools and 265 new classrooms for every year in office since 2009. This amounts to 131 schools and close to 2,400 classrooms, just over 1 school every month. In addition, this year we will see the completion of 11 schools across the province in areas where they are needed the most. Expenditure on new and replacement schools since 2009 has quadrupled from the 445 million rand in 2009-10 to 1.6 billion rand in 2018-19. Our taxes. We were also allocated an additional 298 million rand by the National Treasury for the Education Infrastructure Grant over the next 3 years, which was starting to sound encouraging.
Order.
But I'm afraid they have taken back 250 million rand of that, leaving us with a mere 48 million rand for 3 years for growth, which is not even enough to build 1 school. How are we supposed to accommodate the additional 25,000 learners in our system last year and a similar amount more this year, never mind the backlog from previous years under these circumstances? And it is entirely unnecessary. If we had all that money that the ANC has wasted and stolen, our citizens would be in a far better position. We also have many schools that require maintenance.
Order. There's too much dialogue going across the floor now.
Not dialogue, just shouting.
Honourable Nkondlu, again. Honourable Nkondlu, please, contain yourself.
Thank you, Deputy.
You may continue, Minister.
We also have many schools that require maintenance, but the fact is that there simply is not enough money allocated to us for everything that needs to be done immediately, which has seen an increase in protests on this issue. Nevertheless, we are doing and will continue to do everything we can to address this issue in a sustainable and responsible way. We realise that a lot more needs to be done to improve school infrastructure in the Western Cape. However, I shudder to think what the situation would look like now had the ANC remained in government in this province. The tragic impact of mismanagement in other provinces is there for all to see. And let us not mention Eskom. As a government, we aim to ensure that provincial public finances remain on a sustainable path. This will promote service delivery and ensure that we deliver a budget for people, growth and prosperity. If the ANC understood this, we would not have hit the 3 trillion rand mark for our national debt last week. But now we also have an additional complication of the ANC's state capture project, and that is impacting on our infrastructure and assets. And that is the effects of an ineffective and emasculated criminal justice system and a captured police service. In Pakelsdorp, George, we have a school where their land has been illegally occupied for months now. We obtained an interdict, more invasions happened. To this day, we have not been able to remove them from our property. SAPS does nothing, the sheriff does nothing, and the situation continues. On Wednesday evening, Land belonging to 3 of our schools in the metro suffered the same fate. We have seen what has happened with the rail service also. Wanton destruction with what we have come to expect from the ANC. Absolutely no consequences. The only sustainable way to beat poverty is by education and creating opportunities for economic growth, which will create opportunities for our youth. And of course, we need a capable state. We will continue to achieve this in the Western Cape by ensuring that our budget is managed effectively, efficiently, wisely, and ethically, and that every lever of control we have will be managed in a capable and accountable way for the benefit of the residents of this province. If the ANC stopped wasting money tolerating and even promoting corruption and started using the billions available for the improvement of the conditions of the poor, our country would be on a far better trajectory. Our economy would be growing and more people would be in employment. And if accountability were the accepted norm in government as a whole, we would not be losing billions every year. Mr. Deputy Speaker, where the DA governs, everyone benefits, especially the poor. But we cannot carry on having to make do with less and less whilst having to provide for more and more. It is clear that the only way we are going to grow the budget is by improving the economy, which will lead to more job creation. Education and skills development is crucial to doing that. And the only way we are going to improve both is by the DA taking over national government in May this year. So we can make every province as inviting as the Western Cape. Thank you.
Order. In the absence of the EFF, I see Minister Mbombo, Minister of Health.
Honorable Premier, Segela Somlomo, members of the House, Indwendwe in the gallery, Molweni. Thanks, Minister Mayor and your team for the budget allocation to ensure in health we make a valuable impact in this province, and also to ensure we are responsive to the service needs of the people. Health receives 24.8 billion, which amounts to 37% of the total provincial budget allocation, the biggest slice of the pie. We do endorse the principles you set in terms of the budget allocation. Deputy Speaker, it is worth mentioning that throughout the years, the Western Cape health allocation has always been bigger than other provinces. The average health department share within the total provincial allocation is 33%. In this province, healthcare remains a priority, hence you can see it through the allocation. The demand for healthcare continues to grow, and this is unlikely to change in the short term, given the trends in the social determinants of health and well-being. We face insurmountable challenges. Our environment is a mixture of a complex burden of disease, a constrained fiscal environment which saw the healthcare cut over the last 3 years with over 600 million, which is approximately 6% of the total departmental budget. The situation places the provincial health system under enormous strain, coupled with the unintended consequences like the drought, the fires, and we're also coming from the listeriosis, and now we've got current load shedding. 2019-2020 likely to be a very challenging year because actual load shedding impacts on the health services more than in all other services because we work 24 hours, 365 days a week, catering from the unborn to the oldest, including the diseased patients. Although the slice of the pie is bigger for health, the excitement is short-lived because there are no real-term increase in the budget. Healthcare costs are unsustainable and health spending is higher than economic growth. Hence, it is important that we emphasize and remind the House why an investment in health in the Western Cape is good value to the citizens of this province. Investing in health and the services is not only a human rights obligation, but it is an economic investment. In this budget, the department has a shortfall of about 187 million in real terms. Despite this, we haven't reduced the budget related to the staffing and also to the operating facilities. We use a range of alternate mechanisms to deal with the budget decline. While the budget is decreasing in real terms, population numbers are increasing, and therefore there's a huge demand. The average annual growth in population numbers is about 2% per annum. It is therefore estimated that the budget per member of the population in real terms decreases by the same percentage on an annual basis. We have therefore begun to make bigger moves from the marginal efforts at cost cutting and efficiencies to fundamentally transform the way we do business, to ensure a strong, coherent, and resilient health system. Initiatives that we have undertaken include MIP, which is the Management Efficiency and Alignment Project, community-oriented primary care, the whole of society approach, which I will share in my budget speech. For example, with the MIP, we are engaging with the organized labor and seeking DPSA formal endorsement in 2019 so that the revised structures could be implemented. The culture of collaboration, continuous learning and improvement, and the review of key business processes will be ongoing work throughout the year. As I indicated, I'll elaborate more in my budget speech. Deputy Speaker, the other challenges facing the health system as a whole is the growth in elderly population. We rejoice that people now live longer, with life expectancy that has increased, with the average male living up to 66 years and the female up to 71 years. However, this means an increase in people living with chronic conditions, needing constant clinic visits, and thus further additional resources. South Africa also has an influx of foreign nationals who are uninsured and put more burden on public health services. However, health is a human right, and we cannot deny anybody access to emergency healthcare services. This all adds to the additional pressures we experience. For the coming financial year, we want to thank the Minister for adding the budget on the health infrastructure. That's why we have embarked and earmarked many of the infrastructure projects as part of our investment, which amounts to about 1.2 billion. The construction of Hans Bay Clinic, Lanes Bay Clinic, Caledon EMS Communications Center, Victoria Hospital EC, Swartland Hospital EC, Helderberg Hospital EC, and Observatory Forensic Lab is underway. The Dorrance Ambulance Station, Clairefontaine Regional Hospital, the new Avian Park Clinic, and the site capacity at Eerste Rivier Hospital and Khayelitsha, plus also the new Somersault psychiatry is in the planning phase. Deputy Speaker, of the past years, we acceded even to the calls from community to improve services, in particular pressurized facilities. We have done this and, for example, developed improvement plans, strategies, and implemented Khayelitsha District Hospital, Helderberg Hospital, Grabo, CDC, especially in the recent weeks. There are also other ways in which we aim to improve service delivery to the citizen in the province. In my budget speech, I'll explore more on some of these. And lastly, Deputy Speaker, earlier this month, I hosted the 3rd Annual Ministerial Community Summit, where we took all these priorities to the people. We engaged with statutory structures such as the civil society, the health committees, the hospital boards, academic partners, private partners, as well as the NGO partners from across the province to share Western Cape health budget. We had more than 300 people who attended as far as the Matsikama and also as far as the Beaufort West. We particularly focused on service redesign strategy and to share our successes in health. We want to reassure the citizens of this province that we are committed to provide access to quality health care. We're also committed to spending the public funds wisely to the benefit of the Western Cape population. We reaffirm our commitment to the principles of our Constitution that gives an obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights of the Western Cape citizen to access quality health care. Despite all the challenges we face, we still hold a record of a 14-year unqualified audit. This includes a clean finance audit, which is first of its kind in the country for a health department. Clean and accountable governance is crucial. It reinforces public trust in the way while we manage public money and the rollout of the services. In the context of the service demands and operational climate, conventional ways of providing services and seeking marginal efficiencies has run its course. That's why we'll be able to pilot test the universal health coverage in one of our best places, like in the Saldanha, and we work closely with the department, two other provinces in the Eastern Cape and also in the KZN. The concept has already been developed and we have already sold it to the national. Lastly, I want to thank the head of the department, Dr. Engelbrecht, and her management team, actually for the whole of the 32,000 members of the staff who have built so much of their resilience in spite of the service pressure they face, but they've managed at least to show that they care. We value each one of you and the difference you make in the community. Thank you.
The Honourable Beerwinkel.
Thank you. Deputy Speaker, may I ask your indulgence for a few minutes before I go on to... Don't be nasty. Speaker, I'd like to start today with some pleasantries, as that might be my last opportunity to address everyone here today. I want to take this opportunity to thank the ANC leadership for affording me this opportunity to serve the people of the Western Cape in different capacities here at this legislature and in my constituencies. In absentia, and in particular, I'd like to single out Deputy Minister Squatcher, who at the time found me worthy enough to bring me here from the city. Secondly, Comrade Sengezo, who afforded me, a Metro citizen, to serve in a rural area, Swellendam. I think you will all remember me as Carol Swellendam Beerwinkel. I want those two comrades to know that I am eternally grateful to them for what I have learned and how I have grown. To my Chief Whip, Pierre Ace, my mentor, who was there when I first set foot in local government in the then Westernburg Council, of which I am a proud product. Thank you too for my growth and development as a councillor, but also as a member of this legislature. To everyone here in the DA benches, all of you, and my own comrades, I can attest to lessons I have learned from all of you, and I will carry that with me always. As MECs, some of you I've worked with for many more years even before I got here, and the officials across the 14 departments. Thank you too, for it was in Scopa that we all got to engage with each other. I will most certainly be plowing back most of the lessons that I learned together with you. Thank you, ANC, again, and leadership for this valued opportunity, and I trust that I've lived up to your expectations. In particular, I'd like to single out Treasury and in absentia, Dr. Stegman, in whose term I started and who was instrumental in my growth in financial knowledge, together with the officials of that department, and in whose time MEC Windy was the MEC. That knowledge will not go to waste. To DEDP, which I will speak to later, and just cemented my growth and Cape nature for development and the importance of caring and caring for the environmental. As ANC members, we were solely responsible for holding the executive to account in our oversight role. I thank you all for this opportunity. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I think it is very disingenuous of the MEC Mayor to grandstand about other provinces and make exceptions when the Western Cape's irregular expenditure has grown by 93%. No mention of that. They are also the only province in this country who has taken the Auditor General of South Africa to court for not giving them an opinion that substantiates or supports what they want. As for cost of employment, Western Cape Province is top-heavy, and we all know that. The budget proves that. Firstly, Deputy Speaker, the DA needs to win an outright majority to implement this budget as it stands before us today. The ANC and other coalitions might just stop you in your tracks. Be careful. Deputy Speaker, today, I'd like to touch on an aspect of the budget that speaks to the backbone of delivery, a catalyst for development, and a necessary fundamental foundation for growth. And that is the infrastructure investment in both province and municipal budgets and its implications. The allocation of facilities in communities is what builds those communities. Of the total 68 billion budget, 10 billion is allocated to infrastructure. And if anybody disputes what I'm going to give you now, it's all in this blue book. That's where I got my information. Education is allocated 1.8 billion. Health, 1.1 billion, 25% more than the previous year. Social development, 7.8 million. Human settlements, 2.1 billion, added to that the 83 million they just received in the adjustment budget. Environment and development planning, 48 billion, 26% more than the previous year. And transport and public works, 4 billion. That's only for infrastructure. Of that 10 billion, 5.6 is allocated to maintenance and repairs, 2 billion for upgrades and additions across departments. Add to this the 455 million for virtual catalytic infrastructure. See how they're paging to see whether I'm telling the truth. Nobody expected me to talk about infrastructure. Deputy Speaker, in municipalities, the allocation from national government for capital projects is 2.7 billion, and the provincial allocation is 369 million, down from the previous year's allocation of 513 million. District allocations to municipalities this year is 0, down from 450 million in the previous financial year. Municipalities borrow 6.4 billion, up from the 4 billion in the previous year. One wonders how they're going to be able to repay these loans. In total, the combined infrastructure, member Dennis Joseph, I wonder if you even know what's in the infrastructure budget. In total, the combined infrastructure budget is 22 billion for the 1920 financial year. This DA government says that this budget has maximum citizen impact, but no mention of citizen input. It says it's maximizing service delivery, but no mention of public input. Public participation is a word that you only know in letters, but implementation, no. Not at municipal level for sustainable integrated spatial development, or here with public participation in any form. So how do you determine the needs to justify your allocation? The very core of who you serve has never been consulted or informed. Ask any one of the millions out there, and 9 out of 10 people will tell you they have no clue of what's in this budget or of the infrastructure spend. Attention to 2 departments. I don't have time, Deputy Speaker, so I'll just single out 2. And I'm going to speak on health and education. While one takes cognizance of the Department of Public Works oversees the construction of facilities such as schools and clinics and hospitals and roads, they can only implement what the different departments allocate from their equitable share, which becomes the litmus test for this DA government and their consideration of development for the poor, added to what national government determines in the conditional grants. Let's now focus on education. Infrastructure grant has increased by a whopping 63 million this year, and EPWP allocation is up by 11%, that is 264 million more. But let's look at the track record of education in the past 3 years. Where's education? Can I read to you, Deputy Speaker, from this book? From 2015-16, 16-17, 17-18 here. Number of classrooms built from 661 to 17-18, 285. From 661 to 285. Number of specialist rooms built from 94 to 46. Number of new schools from 23 to 10. Number of new schools under construction from 28 to 13. Number of grade R classrooms from 101 to 21. Number of schools undergoing scheduled maintenance from 30 to 64. That is up. But where? Bear in mind, the selective accolades and recognition, if they complete, it's a DA delivery. If they don't, national government hasn't given enough money. So where did the money for those facilities that you're boasting about come from? Because government didn't give them funds is normally the excuse. 32. That's what page I just said. Does this MEC know how many plunky schools still exist? How many schools have adequate sports facilities? How many mod centers are underfunded for equipment, especially in rural areas? Safe schools. Fencing remains a problem, Deputy Speaker, and school grounds become a thoroughfare because the community in the surrounding areas is not consulted to help to look after the school. It's called public participation. As I continue, please bear in mind that I'm concentrating only on infrastructure spend. So let's go to health and infrastructure spend. Public equitable share increased from 137 million to 342.6 million. Conditional grants, health revitalization grant increased from 95 million to 802.6 million. But again, let's look at the infrastructure and the history of that year. Where's health? From 2015 to 17-18, number of health facilities planned, 47, 17-18, none. Number of facilities designed, 27, 17-18, none. Health facilities constructed, 23, 15, 16, 17, 18, none. Number of facilities equipped, 48, this year, 17, 18, none. Number of facilities operational, 7 in 15, 17, 18, none. Number of facilities maintained last year, 87. New facilities, 4. New facilities upgraded and renovated, 5. Facilities commissioned, 10. Remember, this is from the Health Facilitation Revitalization Grant, which is a conditional grant which they have to implement. Now, in this book again, the MEC earlier spoke about, where's my thing? The MEC earlier spoke about, what was the word she used? I wrote it down. Specialized services. Now, if you look on page 159, I would consider a psychiatric ward a specialized service. So, in Bredasdorp and in Swellendam, there are specialized services, meaning psychiatric wards, planned since 2016. There's allocation given, but nothing has happened to date. Why is that important, Deputy Speaker? What the DA does not admit, that drug lords are making their way into rural areas and alcohol abuse is on the rise. There are no rehabilitation centers, and victims, together with families, have no refuge or safe haven. Clearly, the lives of the poor in the rural matter little to this DA government. The few cases, let me go back to human settlements, or back to education quickly. Human settlements equally depends on conditional grants. This year, they got 2 billion as well as the title deed assistance restoration grant, and also 83 million recently. However, human settlements can build as many units as they want. Unless the social network for which you are responsible is in place, you will continue to fester and breed grounds for drug and alcohol abuse, as it is already the case in most poorer communities. The rich just have better ways of hiding their addictions.
Maybe your time has almost expired. Just finish off now.
At Miller's Rus, Deputy Speaker, there's a chicken run that has been rehabilitated to become a school. The school is still without water. MEC Grant knows about that school. He was there, and he knows. That school is without water. It is not supplied as the current MEC is by Hessequa, because it's in the Swellendam municipality. The roof is caving in, the floors are lifting, and to crown it all, that school is far out from the town and the community. Please, can we start paying attention to the infrastructure that determines the livelihood and the life experience of people in those communities?
Thank you, Member. Your time has expired. Honourable Minister Windy, Minister of Community Safety.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, thank you. It's an honour to speak in this debate and also perhaps sweep at the end. First of all, I'd like to say to the Minister of Finance, Minister Mayor, thank you very much. Thank you very much for handing over an end-of-term budget that shows, and this debate is about the principles of a budget. It shows the good financial strategies. It shows the cutting of corruption or non-toleration of corruption. It shows how policy lands in budgets. And it really, really does show that how a government at the end of a term hands over a budget, and I thank you very much for handing over a budget that a new government is able to use. One can only imagine what a principles debate like this would be in the national government right now on the handing over a budget from the end of a term of a government to the new government. and especially a government where there doesn't seem to be any principles except one, and that's one is loot as much as possible. But I want to move on in this debate to perhaps start to talk about some of the issues that have been raised. And the first one is the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I'm not sure why he comes in, speaks, and then leaves. Perhaps it's to do with some of the faction that is not here today. But, I mean, that's really not acceptable. But he speaks about what he calls the Zille Commission. But in actual fact, what that commission was a commission brought on behalf of the people of this province and really showcased the total failure of ANC government. And it shows the total failure of ANC government that really talks to what we are fighting for right now, is on policing and on how we deal with the effects of crime on society at the moment. And of course, this is a budget debate, and he also raises the kind of money that is budgeted for within this province for community safety versus what we should be spending. He starts to talk about money spent per day, etc. You know that 260 million rand a day is spent by the South African police services in this country. 260 million rand per day, which is a phenomenal number. But if you consider another number in this province, the number that makes me go cold every time I think about it, and that is 1,226. This number, and I'd like the members of this House to really think about this number, 1,226. That's a large number. That is how many people were murdered in this province between November and February. 1,226 people murdered. I mean, this is unbelievable. You cannot believe that it's a kind of number, and you mention, and life just carries on. I mean, everyone is feeling this disastrous failure of investment into energy, and this disastrous failure in our country of the investment and proper investment into infrastructure maintenance, which the Honourable Beerwinkel has just been speaking about. And this failure of Eskom to provide a basic need of energy to an economy, to growing of jobs, to offering of services, to allow society to continue as they do, like a really basic requirement of a government to make sure that you're creating that enabling environment. And everybody is freaking out about the load shedding at the moment. And we were speaking earlier about how we're going to move from an average of load shedding Schedule 4 at the moment back to Schedule 2, and we're all going, phew, that's amazing, what a relief. Schedule 2 is a relief. But 1,226 murders in this province. And this opposition likes to come here, like the Honourable Mdaka, and come here and say, this is a failure of the Department of Community Safety in this province. Quite frankly, he should be standing up saying, this is a failure of South African government, of the South African police services, of our criminal justice system. This is a huge failure. And can you imagine the devastation that 1,226 murders have on families, on individual people, moms, dads, who lose their children in gang warfare, on kids who lose their parents? This is a devastating number. And this number needs to be dealt with. It is absolutely unacceptable. And then he comes here and says, you guys don't like the anti-gang unit. We've been calling for this unit. We've been calling for this unit for 10 years. For 10 years. We get it now, a few months before an election. But you know that we actually measured the murder rate from when the gang unit came in November to February, end of February, on purpose. Because we wanted to see what the murder rate was a year ago, prior to the gang unit being here. And guess what? It is a few murders here or there less. Where's the impact? Then the Honourable Member goes on to talk about a contract that is highlighted where the wife of a gang boss has been now linked to a contract. The Mayor of Cape Town is investigating that right as it goes now. If there's anything untoward about that contract, you will see it cancelled immediately. But the question is, the Honourable Member comes to this House and talks about this contract linked to the wife of a gang boss. He mentions the gang boss. He knows who the gang boss is. The ANC run the anti-gang unit. I haven't seen one arrest of any of these gang bosses. Not one. Not one. Where are we in that? Who is taking responsibility for that? Where does that responsibility lie within the Constitution? Where does it lie within the Constitution? You know that since I took over the post of Community Safety, every month we write to the Minister of Police, every month, with a whole range of issues that we need corrected within the system, and also a whole range of offers that we are putting on the table to say, this is what we will do in coming to the party. This is how we will help to fix the situation, to bring down that 1,226, to make a difference, a real difference. This is what we put on the table. Zero answer to any of those letters. Zero. Nothing. Handed it to the President. Zero. Nothing. There is no commitment to make this a safer province. Nothing whatsoever. But you know what, members of this House and Speaker, I did get one glimmer of hope yesterday when I got recognition for our watching briefs from the National Minister. And the members are right to applaud this, because at least that recognition says we agree to failure of the South African police services and the criminal justice system. The Minister agrees to it because he sees the value in what we're putting on the table just from the court watching briefs. And between 1 October last year and 31 December, do you know that because we also know that there's a standard number, that less than 3% of the gang leaders that do get arrested, less than 3% end up in convictions. So we watch after an arrest, what happens in that process. And do you know, between that period of 1 October to 31 December, 312 of our cases, and our cases we monitor are high-profile cases, cases that really mean something, and have to actually end up with putting someone behind bars. 312 got struck off the court roll of these cases. 129 of them are dockets not in court. In other words, the policing system is not investigating the case and putting the docket in the court case, a basic principle of the criminal justice system. 126 investigations incomplete, 31 witnesses not at court, 19 unavailability of forensic reports, and 7 accused not brought to court. And do you know where the biggest problem lies? In Nyanga. In Nyanga, 20% of these dockets just in that one station. And 53% of these are in the 10 stations that are the ones that we actually have to bring change to our people, where we actually have to make the difference. This rests directly at the door of this ANC government. And then this talks to where we are going in an election. It talks to the choices that the public have to make, the voters have to make. And so then the honourable member comes in the natural course of an election process of the ANC. He comes here to this House, and every time I stand up and speak in the last couple of weeks, I've spoken about the lies that the ANC tell in this House, and then showcase those lies and how those lies are brought into this House. The first thing he talks about is, let's talk about the APPs of the Agricultural Department not being tabled. They have been tabled. They've been dealt with by the Standing Committee. The one that had to be dealt with last was the audit in Scopa, and that's also been dealt with now in Scopa. It has been dealt with. So he mustn't come and tell lies here. His own members and his chief whip should be telling him what the real case is here. So don't come and mislead the public. The second thing is, he talks about land and he talks about expropriation. This ANC government has not used the Constitution in the last 25 years, which allows you to expropriate once. Where have they expropriated the land? But they didn't even have to expropriate the land. District 6, no expropriation was needed. In 25 years, nothing. Nothing. But then let's also talk about Youngsfield or Wingfield or some of the Transnet land. Nothing. Zero. This government of the ANC at a national level spends more money on security of ministers than they do on land reform. There is zero commitment of this government. And then what do? They have the audacity to give us this list. This is the list that they give to the people of South Africa for the next government. So like in this government, the minister hands over a running concern with a budget that's got processes that looks 3 years in advance, that really talks about putting budget to the plans, cutting corruption. And what do the ANC do? They give us the same old broken ANC with the same old highlighted criminals on their list. There's going to be no change. the looting will continue. The principle at a national government under ANC leadership in every province in this country and at a national level, that principle will remain the same. Loot as much as you can. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Order. I see Minister Meyer to respond.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to Honourable Minister Windy. Ramaphosa, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Ramaphosa has imploded. He is today in the Western Cape. He will discover that the ANC in this province has also imploded. From the President's own Commission on State Capture, we know that he is as compromised as many of his colleagues in the cabinet that Minister Windy just explained. He has failed to explain 500,000 rand payment from Bosasa. He rejected his first own explanation, and we know his son is doing business with them. This goes a long way to explain why the key drivers of State Capture project are still in the cabinet. Honourable Deputy Speaker, for the record, State Capture has cost us 1.4 trillion rand. That's almost the total annual tax that we collect in South Africa. Eskom is costing this economy 3 billion rand per day. Cyril Ramaphosa se intensie, agbare adjunkspeaker, is nou om die Suid-Afrikaanse Reservebank te nasionaliseer. Die president het aangedui dat die ANC besluit het om die Reservebank te nasionaliseer, dat daardie besluit moet uitgevoer word, omdat hulle die bank se soevereiniteit wil bevestig. Dit is egter ironies, agbare adjunkspeaker, want die grondwet bepaal uitdruklik dat die Reservebank moet onafhanklik funksioneer. President Ramaphosa kan nie meer vertrou word nie, want vir die buitelanders vertel hy dat die Suid-Afrikaanse Reservebank se onafhanklikheid ononderhandelbaar is, maar in Suid-Afrika dryf hy aktief die nasionalisering van die Reservebank. He went to Davos in Switzerland, to the World Economic Forum, and when they asked him about the central bank, he said that bank, we must protect the independence of the central bank in South Africa.
We always speak with the folk.
He spoke that in Europe, but when he came here to South Africa in Parliament, he said to the people in South Africa, we must nationalize the Reserve Bank. That man is today in the Western Cape. The people will reject him because he's a liar. Hy lieg net. Agbare Speaker, die stryd om die Suid-Afrikaanse bank te nasionaliseer is teenstrydig met die bepaling in artikel 242 van die grondwet wat bepaal dat die bank onafhanklik moet wees. Collega's, sodra die Suid-Afrikaanse Reservebank genasionaliseer word, sal dit lei tot hyperinflasie en ons monetêre beleid finaal vernietig. Die ANC het reeds al die geld in die nasionale tesourie gesteel en teiken nou die Reservebank, en dit is om geld te druk en dan die gedrukte geld ook nog te steel. Zimbabwe en Venezuela het al sentrale banke genasionaliseer en dit het rampspoedige gevolge. Agbare adjunkspeaker, vandag soos ons hier sit, het Zimbabwe nie 'n eie geldeenheid nie. Hulle aanvaar nie die Zim-dollar nie, hulle aanvaar slegs 2 geldeenhede, die Suid-Afrikaanse rand en Amerikaanse dollars. Sodra Suid-Afrika se sentrale bank genasionaliseer word, sal ons geldeenheid se soevereiniteit ook vernietig. En daarom, agbare adjunkspeaker, die gevaar lig te brand. Die Suid-Afrikaanse Reservebank moet beskerm word, want ons kan nie nog 'n VBS Mutual Bank in Suid-Afrika bekostig nie. Agbare adjunkspeaker, die kommentaar wat gemaak was oor die infrastruktuurbegroting. Ek is baie trots op die infrastruktuurbegroting van ongeveer 30 miljard rand wat hier ter tafel gelê is, want hierdie kabinet het hom verbind tot 'n infrastruktuurbegeleide groei. Primêr daartoe het ons verbind tot herstelwerk en instandhouding. Maar primêr het ons ook seker gemaak dat die munisipaliteite se infrastruktuur en instandhoudingsbegrotings ook gereflekteer word in ons begrotings. En die onderskeie ministers sal breedvoerig in hierdie debatte deelneem rondom die infrastruktuurbegroting. Ons het juis oor die afgelope 5 jaar daarin geslaag om die infrastruktuurbegroting ook stelselmatig te skuif, soos minister Grant versoek het oor die afgelope 5 jaar, dat ons meer moet fokus op infrastruktuur om die ekonomie te laat groei. En daarom is ek baie trots vir die infrastruktuurbegeleide strategie en die onderskeie begrotings daartoe. Maar die onderskeie ministers sal in hulle onderskeie begrotingsdebatte breedvoerig daaroor rapporteer aan die huis. Agbare Speaker, ek bedank al die lede wat hier deelgeneem het aan die onderskeie begrotingsdebatte. Ek bedank die provinsiale tesourie, as ook al die lede van die onderskeie begrotingposte, die direkteur-generaal en as ook al die onderskeie departementshoofde, as ook die hoof van tesourie vir hierdie insette in hierdie begroting. Ek dank u.
That concludes the debate on the consideration of the principle of the bill. Are there any objections to the approval of the principle of the bill? There is an objection. I'll put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Aye. Those against, no. I think the ayes have it. The ANC's objection will be recorded. The Secretary will read the bill.
Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
The House will deal with the separate votes from now onwards. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of the Conduct Committee on the complaint by Honourable Member C.M. Tagmo against Honourable Member M.G.E. Wiley.
If there is an opportunity for a declaration from parties, if they so wish, I see the ANC.
No, I don't need to. I'm going to national. Chap, if I start, it's the
You may start.
Okay. Deputy Speaker, the ANC wish to express its serious concern at the failure of the Conduct Committee to pursue the complaint against Honourable Wiley. The DA has used its majority to block an investigation into the Chief Whip, who through his conduct has clearly undermined the oversight role of the standing committees.
Order.
This is a dangerous precedent, as Honourable Wiley's conduct was an attempt to intimidate members from asking questions to the departmental officials. This decision is sad day for oversight. We saw how the DA removed Leonard Max from a committee for attempting to hold the MEC and the department accountable. Once
Order,
they had
please.
removed Max, the DA then tried to silence members with bullying by the Chief Whip. As the ANC, we believe that disgraceful conduct of the Chief Whip should have been investigated despite the report of the registrar. Thus, Speaker, the ANC cannot support this resolution.
Thank you. In the absence of the EFF, the DA, I see the Honourable Winger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The complaint against Honourable Wiley was attended to by a preliminary investigation. So it was investigated, and the registrar noted that the complaint was mistakenly based on the provincial code and actually falls outside the reach, the scope, and the auspices of the conduct committee, and advised the committee not to pursue the matter any further. We then deliberated and recommended that we follow the registrar's own recommendation. We therefore report to this House that we accept the report of the registrar to not pursue the matter any further. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the declaration on this report. Are there any objections to the report being adopted? There is an objection. I put the question. Those in favour of the report being adopted will say aye. Aye. Those against say no. No. I think the ayes have it. I have noted the objection. The Secretary will now read the sixth order of the day.
Consideration of report of the Conduct Committee on the failure of Honourable Member N.T. Nkondlo to submit disclosure forms timelessly in 2016.
I have been informed by the Chief Whip that the Programming Authority resolved that there would be no list of speakers and that parties who wish to speak will now be afforded the opportunity to make a declaration for a maximum of 3 minutes. I now recognise the parties. I see the ANC. Nobody. I see the Honourable Winger in the absence of the EFF.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Nkondlo, having been sworn in as a member of the House on the 9th of November 2016, failed to return her initial disclosure of registral interest forms within 60 days of her appointment as a member, as is required by the 60-day limit which is required by the Provincial Code of Conduct. The committee then deliberated and found that by failing to return her disclosure forms timeously, the member was in breach of Section 11.2 of the Provincial Code of Conduct. This decision concurred with the recommendation of the registrar that the member had indeed breached the code by failing to submit her declarations timeously. The member was then afforded the opportunity to make written submissions in mitigation of a sanction to be recommended by the Conduct Committee and was given 14 days to provide such. She noted that she would be travelling for parliamentary business, and the committee duly extended the deadline for submission to the 23rd of July. The member, however, again lapsed, and the response was received late to the extended deadline, and it was not received on the 23rd of July as per the request, but on the 5th of December. The matter was then deliberated on by the Conduct Committee on the 6th of December, in which we considered that Honourable Nkondlo was a new member. However, she ought to have known and ought to have submitted her declarations on time. During these deliberations, the committee resolved, with the ANC dissenting, to recommend that the member receive a reprimand in terms of Section 32(1) of the Provincial Code of Conduct. I therefore encourage this House to accept the recommendations of the committee.
That concludes the declaration on this report. Are there any objections to the report being adopted? There is an objection. I put the question. Those in favour of the report being adopted will say aye. Aye. Those against say no. So it is dutifully noted. With order, please, members. We have just dealt with two reports. May I call the House to order, please? Honourable Nkondlo, will you please stand? Pursuant to the adoption by the House of the report of the Conduct Committee on your failure to submit your members' disclosure form timeously, I hereby reprimand you for breaching paragraph 11.2 of the Code of Conduct for members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Members of the Provincial Parliament have to abide individually and collectively by the principles, rules and obligations set out in the Code of Conduct, and your failure to do so is a serious transgression. Public representatives must at all times ensure that their conduct as members is beyond reproach and must in fact lead the way to ensure that ethical and responsible leadership is demonstrated. I trust that you will learn from this experience and you will not be found wanting in this regard in future. You may take your seat. That, honourable members, concludes the business for the day. The House is adjourned. Thank you.